get going here. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Lori Zenisser. I'm the CEO of Emunah of America. Many of you might know me from Canada. I used to be, when I left, I was chairman of the board of Emunah of Canada in like 2008, a long time ago. So, welcome to Cooking with Love, the third of the series. And tonight is Flavor Boosters. And we're so excited to have partnered with our Emunah sisters in Canada on this program. I will admit, my fellow Canadians did all the work, and I want to thank all the committee members, Dahlia Hakimi, Ariella Weiss, Karen Mayer, Shira Schwartz, and Marissa Muscat for really doing an outstanding job. And, we're just really, really pleased that we could, tag on to this. So tonight's chef is one of Emunah of America's very, very good friend, Elizabeth Kurtz. She's the creator of gourmetkoshercooking.com, and she's a columnist for several national magazines. She's a featured chef for the Recipe Box TV, and many of you might have known, I can't even speak. Many of you may remember Elizabeth did an amazing cookbook. It was her first cookbook for Emunah of America. It's called Celebrate, and it was a tremendous fundraiser, very successful, and we had the privilege of working with her on that. And that book, just a little plug, that book is available on Amazon and emunah.org. Also, tonight, I'd like to thank Elizabeth's daughter, Sarah, her son, Avi, her husband, Rob, and Ellie from my office for managing the tech piece. We really, really appreciate that. And of course, if anyone has any questions, we love questions, direct them to the Q&A. And FYI for Canadians, you can get miso, which is an ingredient in the recipe tonight, at Kosher City. And New Yorkers, we're very spoiled. We can get miso anywhere. That's why I love New York. Anyway, at this time, Elizabeth, take it away.
Okay, great. We're just gonna turn me to the makeshift kitchen. 1 second here. Okay, I don't usually cook in the dining room, but the connection is much better here. So this is not only a lesson in flavor boosters, but it's also a lesson in you don't need a fancy kitchen to be a great cook. Thank you, Emunah of America, Emunah of Canada, Emunah of everywhere, every Emunah event, every Emunah friend is a friend of mine. I'm so grateful to Emunah and all the wonderful, wonderful people that you help. So today we are going to talk about flavor boosters. It's very weird teaching to a camera. I'm used to teaching to a large group of people where I can see on your faces smiles, nods, frowns, confusion, happiness. So please use that Q&A box that tells me you're out there, you're engaged, what you like, what you don't like. Everything is a good question. And I miss all of you, and I really hope you're all safe and well, and look forward to times where we can do this again in person. So the first thing, I jump around a lot. We're gonna do 3 recipes today. We're gonna do a chickpea soup, we're gonna do miso glazed eggplant, and we're gonna do chai tea and roasted garlic infused chicken. Now, one of the reasons we chose these 3 recipes is what I hope to teach you today is really how, without adding a lot of calories or fat, and often using things that are just in your pantry, you can really, really enhance the flavor of your food, make it much more satiating, and really broaden your taste buds and your palate. And I personally think that is really the key to staying full and satiated, is by lighting those taste buds on fire. So the first thing I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to start the soup. But before I start the soup, I'm going to get the head of roasted garlic ready for the chicken. That's an essential ingredient in the chicken. I make roasted garlic very, very often. It keeps very well in the refrigerator. And I use it in marinades, in salad dressings. We smear it on bread with the roasted garlic oil. Sometimes I add some fresh herbs to it. It's a fantastic flavor enhancer, just this one ingredient itself. So I highly recommend it. It's super simple to make. You're going to take a head of garlic, just a fresh head of garlic, a normal head of garlic. And you're gonna horizontally slice off the top, just like this, okay, to expose the bulbs, okay, and the flesh. And you're gonna put it in some double-sided heavy-duty foil. I just took a piece of heavy-duty aluminum foil and doubled it. The reason I say double it is just so that none of the oil spills over in your oven and you don't make this and then text me, and you're all welcome to text me, but I don't want you to curse me out in text that I smoked up your whole kitchen. You take your garlic, and now you just generously sprinkle it with extra virgin olive oil. Now, when I cook, I only use extra virgin olive oil. I never use light olive oil. Light olive oil is actually not what it implies, meaning lower in calories. It's just a blended oil of vegetable oils or canola oils mixed with olive oil. I like good, hearty, fruity tasting extra virgin olive oil. And then you're gonna wrap it tightly. The one other thing you could do is drizzle it with a little honey. Sometimes when I use it for salad dressings or before Rosh Hashanah, I drizzle the whole head of garlic with a little bit of honey, but you're gonna wrap it nice and tightly, literally like this. And then I usually put it on a glass or a baking dish, and you put it in the oven on 350 for about 45 minutes. Then you're gonna take it, when we're about to use it, I'll show you what it looks like all prepared. That one is gonna go in the oven, but like I said, I keep a whole bunch of them. I usually have about 2 of them at a time in the refrigerator, and they keep for a good 2 weeks without a problem. Okay, that ingredient is gonna be used for the chicken, which we're gonna get to later. Now I'm gonna skip back to the soup so that everything really has time to come together. You can see the finished product on everything. Okay, we're making a chickpea soup. Again, one of the reasons we chose these particular recipes is they have some familiar and some unfamiliar ingredients that I wanted you to kind of, through flavor phone, hopefully smell and watch the intense things coming together here and get electrified to try them at home yourself. But one of the reasons I think you've never tried a soup like this is, who would think that chickpeas make a good base for a soup? What's amazing about chickpeas is that they're really, they're high in protein. They are inexpensive because you can, in this case, I just buy them canned and rinse them off. I rinse off a lot of the sodium and some of that gumminess that comes together, but they serve as a fantastic blank palette for other great seasonings in the soup. And they end up, when we puree them with an immersion blender, they end up creating a real creaminess to the soup. Okay, 1 second, we're getting the campfire cooking going here. Okay, there we go, campfire cooking going. It's a little bit weird to be using a very, very cheap stovetop and a very nice Le Creuset pan, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so when you cook, in terms of technique, you want to first heat your pan. It's a little bit sensitive with using this type of burner as opposed to a regular BTU burner, but you want to get your pan nice and hot, so about 30 seconds to a minute, and then you're going to heat up your oil and let your oil get nice and hot. That way, it creates a floor where when the onions hit the pan, and that's what's going to go in first, the onions are going to begin to right away crisp and soften and cook through. You don't want the onions to become just a sponge to the oil. That will create a greasy mouthfeel or a greasier texture to your soup. And we really want to brown the onions and get some of that brown going on the bottom of the pan, because that caramelization, remember, equals flavor. Flavor equals satiating. I'm letting the oil get hot, and then I'm going to add about a half of onion chopped. Later on, if you want me to demonstrate chopping an onion, I'm happy to do that. I figured in the last 2 classes, you've probably had enough chopping of onions. But in this case, I just used a regular white onion chopped. You could use a red onion. You could use shallots. They're generally all interchangeable. You could use a Vidalia onion if you don't like something quite as sharp. I just used a good old-fashioned yellow onion. Okay, I'm going to add that. And I'm not sure if you can hear that sizzle, but that's kind of the sound you want to get going. And we're gonna let this soften up just a minute before we add the garlic. One thing about writing recipes is I always write everything exactly in order as a good recipe should be written. What's fantastic about this soup is it's really just a slow cook layer. It's not even slow cook because it cooks in 30 minutes, but it's just a layering of seasonings one on top of the other. So we start with the onion. We're going to add the garlic in just a few minutes. And this soup has a seasoning called garam masala. So this is the seasoning that kind of steals the show in this soup. It is a blended seasoning, and it's kind of a seasoning very popular in Indian cooking. I give you a recipe to make one yourself. It is available with hashkacha. For me, I got it at Fairway Market, but Perig sells it. Not so many of the Heimish brands sell it as a spice blend, but I think McCormick sells it. Some of the national brands sell it, and I very, very, very highly recommend it. I gave you another recipe in this group of recipes of my favorite lentils. I use it in that. I use it on roasted chicken. It just has bold, beautiful, highly intense Indian type flavors, but it's not old-fashioned Indian cooking where you walk down the street and you smell the curry and you just walk by a restaurant and you feel like your clothes smell like curry for the whole night. It has intense flavor, but they're very subtle and they're very warm. So this is a really, really nice soup, especially for the fall.
Someone said they sell garam masala at Savers in Toronto.
Okay, so thank you. Somebody just posted that Savers in Toronto sells garam masala. And again, one of the things that I miss in having you all in a room together is if you could try this soup together, you would taste it and then run out and buy garam masala. But trust me, it is a fabulous and fantastic spice. I'm not even sure when I started getting turned on to it. In the summertime, I take fresh lemon and Dijon, fresh garlic and olive oil, and I add the garam masala. And I add it as a marinade to cube chicken. And I just take skewers with cubes of chicken and onions and tomatoes, leave it in the marinade, and it makes just a fantastic both barbecue chicken kebab, as well as like a Shabbos day chicken that you could serve room temp. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm gonna keep going. My onion is, these are not too hot. My onion is softened. I wouldn't call it brown, but I would call it softened. It's a little bit translucent, and I'm gonna add the garlic. You'll notice in most of my recipes, there's a lot of recipes you'll see onions and garlic are added together. I almost always soften the onion first and then layer the flavor of garlic. I like garlic to get softened, but not brown and bitter. So that's why you'll see in my recipes, I almost always do it that way. The other thing that's a little bit different in cooking with more Indian type spices, the garam masala, and we're using fresh ground ginger, is we're gonna add that after the garlic is softened. I'm gonna add those things to the bottom of the pan. And what heat does to dried herbs is it kind of wakes them up. It lights them on fire. You have to think about it like an herb, a dried herb is just sitting here going to sleep, and it needs the heat to brighten that flavor. But I like to add it to the bottom of the pot as opposed to the liquid later on. Okay, so I'm adding about 4 teaspoons of fresh garlic. Now, garlic, I really, although you'll see most of my recipes are pretty quick and pretty easy, there's certain things that I always like to use fresh. Garlic is one of them. I buy a lot of heads of garlic and I peel them and I chop them and leave them in like glass dishes. You can see like I had this one chopped. I just put some extra virgin olive oil in it and I keep it in the refrigerator for the week so that I have fresh garlic always ready to go. But fresh garlic makes a huge difference. The chopped garlic in the jar acts like garlic, doesn't taste like garlic.
So what's no for using
Somebody asked in the chat if I'm using a Le Creuset pot. I love Le Creuset pots. They're cast iron pots layered with enamel. They are very, very heavy. They conduct heat beautifully. They hold up well. They're lifetime purchases. There are some copies of them that are very good as well. I prefer to have fewer pots that are better than have drawers and drawers full of pots that are not as good quality. These can go on the cooktop in the oven. They do not go in the dishwasher, but they're very easy to clean. Watch sales on like Black Friday and different secular holidays. They do go on sale, but they're amazing, amazing, amazing pans. Okay, I'm putting in a teaspoon of garam masala.
Someone wants to know, if blue, is it a dairy pot?
Oh, somebody asked me it's blue. Is it a dairy pot? So I like the color blue. It is not a dairy pot. All my Le Creuset pots are fleischic because they're more expensive. So we eat dairy and parve. Excuse me, we eat fleischic and parve most often in my house. So I keep my best stuff for fleischic and parve.
Is this a 7-quart?
This is called a Dutch oven. I don't know how many quarts it is. Somebody asked how many quarts is it? Okay, so I added the garam masala and the fresh ground ginger. I wish you could smell my kitchen. It smells of a little bit of curry, cinnamon, cardamom. It really smells warm and flavorful, but not overpowering, at all. The next thing I'm gonna add are chickpeas. As I said, this is just 2 15-ounce cans of chickpeas. I rinse them off in a strainer with cold water. I'm gonna add those to the bottom of the pan. I'm gonna add about a half a cup of apple juice, unsweetened apple juice for a little sweetness. I'm gonna add crushed tomatoes from the can. I like the San Marzino crushed tomatoes, but any brand is fine. I'm gonna add some stock now. I like the Imagine chicken stock. This one's a parve one. We could have made this fleischic if you want. You could also use vegetable stock if you prefer. This has no MSG. It's a fantastic product. I use it all the time. But when I'm making fleischic, I just keep the extra stock from my chicken soup. Okay. And now I'm going to add 1 can of coconut milk, which is also going to help make it a little bit creamy and delicious. And I'm going to bring it to a boil and then reduce it to a simmer and cook it for about 20 or 30 minutes. After it is simmered for that time, I'm going to use an immersion blender. If any of you want to see what an immersion blender looks like, I will get that later and show you. And I will puree the soup. And at that point, I will add kosher salt, fresh cracked black pepper, and cilantro. For those of you who don't like cilantro, I know many of you it tastes like soap. You can use parsley or you can omit it. I happen to love it. Don't not make the soup because you don't make cilantro. It's fine to omit it. It just adds another layer of flavor. I always use kosher salt. People get afraid. They think that I'm using too much salt because I use kosher salt. Kosher salt dissolves faster, makes sure it brings out the flavor in your food as opposed to making something taste salty like iodized salt does. So
we have some questions.
Okay, we have some questions. I'm bringing this to a boil.
Do you have a substitute for coconut milk?
Okay, I do have a substitute for coconut milk, although I like the rich creaminess of coconut milk. You can use just regular almond milk. You could use soy milk as well, or you could use milk if you wanted to make this dairy, but then of course you're going to make sure you use a vegetable stock, or as I did, a parve stock.
And is the coconut milk full fat or reduced?
You could use, somebody asked about the coconut milk, full fat or reduced fat. So I did use the full fat. I prefer the full fat, but you most definitely can use the reduced fat. For coconut milk, you can almost always use the reduced fat coconut milk, except when you're making coconut whipped cream. I don't know if you guys know that kitchen hack. It's a great, I guess, healthier non-dairy whipping cream. Coconut milk does have a lot of fat in it, by the way. It's not that it's low fat, it's just better fat for your body. But you can literally take this can, you put it in the refrigerator for 24 hours. It must be in the refrigerator for 24 hours. Then you take it out and take the congealed part, put it in a bowl, and with very cold beaters, beat it, and it beats up just like whipped cream. And it works great for regular coconut milk. It does not work for low fat, for the reduced fat or whatever it's called, light coconut milk.
And someone wants to see the
Soup?
the stock cart.
Oh, sure. Here's the stock carton, so you can see the stock carton as well. Okay, while Sarah shows you the stock carton, I'm going to move the soup and move on. The soup is going to simmer for 20 minutes in my kitchen. So give me 1 second. I forgot oven mitts and it was like just a little too hot. If you could put that on for 20 minutes for me and put a timer on and the burner. Okay, I'm turning the burner off and I am moving on to the miso eggplant. If there are any more questions, please feel free to interrupt me. You can interrupt me with the eggplant, for the soup, whatever you like, okay? We have, just to catch us all up, we have the garlic in the oven, and we're roasting the head of garlic that's going to be used in our chicken. We have really, most of the soup is done, except for using an immersion blender to puree the soup into a smooth soup. Again, I'm going to add the cilantro, the kosher salt and pepper to just brighten the flavors. Going to puree it, and then the soup is really good to go. Okay, and now we're going to start on the miso eggplant. Now the miso eggplant, I gave you a couple ways. I gave you one way to do it. I am going to actually do it a slightly different way, in that I tell you to mix the marinade, and then and to put the eggplant on a baking sheet. And then pour the marinade over the eggplant and mix it. For some reason, I've been doing it a slightly different way now. I cut the eggplant, put it in a big bowl, and then in a separate bowl, whisk the I guess the sauce, the coating, coat the eggplant and put it on the baking sheet. Either way, perfectly fine, same easy technique. I do not salt eggplant. A lot of people salt eggplant and they feel that releases all the bitter enzyme out of it. I find that a standard beautiful eggplant that they sell in every single market isn't really bitter anymore, as long as whatever you are seasoning it with, you don't wait a long time to do so. This would not be something like in the morning, I would cut the eggplant, leave it in a bowl, and 2 hours later come back and season it. If you're doing it right away, I don't find any problems with cutting it, chopping it up into the bowl, and then adding the seasonings later. Okay, so I'm gonna just cut this up. I'm gonna move my cutting board over, even though I can cut on this. And for this dish, when you roast the eggplant, it gets so nice and hot that the peel is so thin that it almost just melts. It doesn't melt off. I don't mean like that. I just mean that it kind of melts in your mouth without a problem. So I personally have no problems leaving the peel on. Sarah, would you mind just moving this stuff out of the way for me? Thank you. Great. Okay, so I'm taking the chopped eggplant. I'm going to cut 2 eggplants. I'm almost done chopping one. The other reason I wanted to do this recipe is I feel that we all have enough recipes for zucchini and green beans and even mushrooms and onions. We need to broaden our horizons with other farm fresh ingredients. Eggplants are they're not really even seasonal anymore. Haven't you found? I find it. I'm not sure if it's like this in Canada, but in the United States, it's hard to find ingredients that are seasonal anymore, with the exception of like persimmons and artichokes and things like that. Almost everything is available year round. Yes, it's true that the watermelon tastes much better in the summertime, but in our markets, watermelon is available all year round, as are strawberries and cantaloupes and really anything. I mean, when I was a kid, and I'm not that old, melons were for the summer. And today we're so lucky that we really have all of this available all the time.
Someone is allergic to eggplant and wants to know what other veggies this would work with.
Okay, so for anyone who either doesn't like eggplant and is saying to me right now, the reason I make green beans all the time is because that's what I like, or if you're allergic to eggplant, you can really use this sauce on any vegetable you like with the exact same cooking technique, but just adjust the cooking times to what would be appropriate for that vegetable. And later on, you can ask me specific vegetables about how long I think would be required. Okay, so that is like the extent of cutting up the eggplant, and that's why I do it in a bowl. It's a big, nice bowl of it, okay? So now, the other ingredients. I lost my little bowl, so I'll use this one. Okay. Next ingredients. First I want to show you what the packages of miso look like. Okay, so these are some of the brands of miso. I want to talk a little bit about miso. Sarah, if you could get me one more bowl, that would be terrific. And the ginger knob from the freezer. Okay, so this is the national brand that we get. Miso comes in 3 flavor profiles: white, red, and brown. Okay, this is the red one, which is the middle in terms of density. You can see I like miso. I use it a lot. This is the white miso, and it looks a little lighter in color, like that. And I don't have brown miso, but I really just wanted you to see. I only use the brown sometimes as a marinade enhancer, but let me tell you a little bit more about miso. Miso is a concentrated, thank you, right over there for now, a concentrated soybean paste. It's an amazing, amazing flavor emulsifier and tenderizer. So you can add a nice heaping tablespoon of miso to almost any meat marinade, just like you would add soy sauce, but it's even heartier. It has more complex density than soy sauce, and more concentrated flavor. It adds depth of flavor, and like I said, is a great tenderizer. So I do use it on both chicken, in meat marinades. Again, a teaspoon of it in a salad dressing is phenomenal. It's great in dips. I think it pairs very, very nicely with green beans, asparagus, scallions, eggplant, any of those flavor profiles, ginger, of course, fresh garlic, but it's really, really nice. If you have any questions about miso, let me know. They can be used interchangeably. If you can only find white, use white. If you can only find red, use red. You may, if you can only find brown, you might want to reduce the quantity a little bit because it is even more concentrated, a little bit like how you use light brown sugar and dark brown sugar. Interchangeable, but one has a little more depth of flavor. Okay.
Someone wants to know if you're substituting miso for soy sauce, what's the equivalent now?
Yeah, so in terms of substituting miso for soy, I would use like 1 tablespoon of miso to 2 or 3 tablespoons of soy. It's more concentrated. Okay, so this is more of an Asian flavor profile in this dish in general. I think it really comes across as like something that comes right out of a Chinese restaurant without having to get out your wok, without having to make a big wet mess, and without having to fry anything. So it's about a tablespoon of sesame oil. And these measurements do not need to be exact. Okay. I use a tablespoon of soy sauce in addition to the miso. Okay.
Someone said every time I follow a recipe using miso, I find the dish ridiculously salty, and she likes salt.
Right. Right. So the interesting thing is, so somebody talked about how their dishes come out too salty when they use miso. So certainly adjust the salt content. Certainly, if it also has soy sauce, use a low sodium soy. And then the last thing I would recommend is make sure you use then, in this case, the white miso, because that will be a little less concentrated. You can also always balance it a little bit with like an almond milk or a soy milk if something comes out, or you can add, if you're cooking something and it's a little too salty, you add a big dollop of a peeled potato and just cook that for about 15 minutes, and the potato will suck up some of that sodium flavor to make it a little more palatable. Okay, this recipe, I use mirin. Mirin is rice cooking wine. It's an amazing, amazing Asian ingredient. It's available in national markets. Okay, keep me honest here. How much garlic? How much spicy mayo?
A teaspoon of fresh minced garlic.
Okay, great. A teaspoon of, I have more garlic. Here's my chopped up garlic. Remember, I chop it at the beginning of the week. You can see mine's not even chopped up so fine, but I think it works just fine like that.
And 1.5 tablespoons spicy mayo.
Great. 1.5 tablespoons of spicy mayo. Exploding spicy mayo. We buy spicy mayo. Sometimes I make it. You just take mayonnaise and mix it with sriracha, and you get homemade spicy mayo adjusted to your palate.
Melissa said Kosher City has mirin.
Okay, great. Kosher City also has mirin. I really recommend mirin to keep in your pantry. It's a fantastic ingredient. Okay, my next kitchen hack is, or trick, I would say. So this is a microplane. A microplane is typically used for zesting lemons. It's fantastic in getting just the zest without the bitter white pith. I like to also use a nice sharp micro. They're available on Amazon for like $9.99. I also use it for two things. Well, when I'm not dropping things. Okay, so I keep my ginger knobs. Here's a big piece of ginger. I break it into different pieces. Fresh ginger is an amazing ingredient. I break it into smaller pieces and I store it in the freezer. So this is rock hard from the freezer. I'm adding the water here. You can see it doesn't matter what order you do the ingredients. So this is literally from the freezer. It's rock hard. You just go right onto your microplane and peel and all. You just grate it right into your dish. And it really just becomes melted soft. You don't need to peel it, as I said, and it can be quite fibrous if you look at it close up. So I find that this is a way to break down those fibers and get it into your dish much more easily. Okay. And you just tap, tap, tap. You can also use it. You can also use it for a nice big piece of fresh garlic like this. Instead of chopping garlic, goes right in. You can see it gets nice and mushy right in your dish. Okay. So this is what this marinade, this sauce kind of looks like. Can you see that? Ish?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, great.
Someone wants to know what to substitute for ginger.
What is a substitute for ginger? Ground ginger. I would just use ground ginger. Don't be afraid if you don't like a particular seasoning to just reduce it a little bit. Instead of eliminating it completely, just reduce it so you can get a sense, so you can get that broad palette of what that ingredient offers without feeling like it's going to overwhelm you. Okay, so now I'm going to take the sauce, pour it over the eggplant. I did probably add a little more eggplant than the recipe generally calls for, but I'm just going to mix it up with my hands. Till it's nice and coated, till all the eggplant is coated. So again, you could have just put the eggplant right on your baking dish, as I mentioned in the recipe text. And I'm going to pour it onto the baking sheet in a minute. Although I have regular roasting temperatures on here, for both the chicken and the eggplant, I would highly recommend, for those of you who have it, to use the convection setting on your oven. What the convection setting does is it naturally raises the heat in the oven by having the fan spin the whole time that something is in the oven. So if the oven temperature is called for 375 bake, convection will automatically reduce the oven temperature to 350. Because the fan is spinning, it will act like a 375 oven, if that makes sense. Foods will cook faster, they will brown, they will more naturally caramelize and brown. And just because the air will be spinning around, instead of the heat from the top and the bottom of the oven just hitting the top and the bottom, and then some condensation kind of happens from there. Does that make sense? So we're going to put this in the oven now. Once I get it on the baking sheet, we're going to put this in the oven in a single layer. And when it comes out of the oven, nice and roasted and toasted and cooked through, I'm going to sprinkle it with scallions or sliced green onions, the same exact thing. And I am going to top it off with some sesame seeds. Okay, I'm going to put this in the oven. Hold on 1 second. Sarah, if you could set a timer, that'd be great. I don't know. Yeah, 20 minutes. Okay. I forgot one thing. I didn't put the miso in that, but okay. Hold on. We skipped an ingredient while we did that. Okay, so sometimes while you're doing things too fast, I didn't add all the miso, but here's the good news. We're taking the eggplant out. I'm adding a little more miso with a little bit of sesame oil. In fact, I'm going to do it with you right now to show you how it still comes out perfectly. Okay, here we go. I would normally just completely add the miso on its own, but because it's more like a paste, I need to break up the paste a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more sesame oil to it. And a sprinkle of water. These are all already in the recipe anyway. And the fact is I made more eggplant than the recipe calls for, so having a little more sauce is a good thing. And I'm just softening this up.
Someone asked if those are the recipes.
Of course you're getting the recipes. I believe with the link, some of the recipes were sent out, and if they weren't, you're definitely getting the recipes.
Yes, we'll send them again. We'll definitely send them out.
Okay, so I'm just moving the miso, the new part of the miso, back in. So you can't always do this. When you forget an ingredient, you can't always do this, but sometimes you can. So in this case, it was perfectly fine.
Someone's allergic to sesame and wants to know which oil is next best.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys can hear Sarah say the questions. That's why I'm repeating them. If somebody is allergic to sesame oil, they can use peanut oil. Sesame oil has a very, very robust flavor. So I like a heavier oil, like a peanut oil. But if the person is also allergic to peanut oil, which often follows for people who are allergic to sesame oil, you can use vegetable oil, you can use canola oil, another neutral oil, or if you're looking for something healthier, you can use avocado oil. I'm putting this back in the oven. Okay.
Before you move on,
Yes.
someone said, can you clarify? Does the convection mode adjust whatever you set the oven to? I.e., if you set to 400 or 300, will convection oven adjust accordingly?
Okay, so I'm going to clarify on the convection piece. Most convection ovens automatically adjust. So, for example, if you turn on your oven to convection, it will like right now, when you turn, most of us, when you turn your oven on bake, it automatically goes to 350. So when you turn on convection, it will automatically go to 325. So most convection ovens make that 25-degree automatic adjustment. But if it doesn't, then you should know in reading a recipe, if it says to roast the chicken at 375 on, bake your chicken at 375 or preheat your oven to 375 degrees. If you're using the convection setting, you want to adjust it to 350 convection. I hope that answers that question. What I do convection are roasted potatoes, roasted vegetables. I roast chicken, oven roasted. I very, very rarely cover chicken to cook it. I like it to get roasted and browned and caramelized. So oven roasted chicken, potatoes, vegetables. Challah is amazing on 325 for 24 minutes on the convection setting. It's fantastic. Little soft inside, but crispy and crunchy on the outside. It's really gorgeous. What I don't do convection are Jewish meats like brisket or French roast or Delmonico roast, or even the more expensive cuts like a standing rib roast. I do not do any kind of cakes or cheesecakes on convection. They're great for cookies too. 325 convection, like 7 minutes, really good. Any more questions on convection or any of that?
Yeah, someone said with convection, do you adjust the time as well?
Yes, great question. I'm sorry I didn't cover that. With convection, things will cook faster. So I don't know your oven. Your oven is kind of like your running sneakers. You got to get to know your oven a little bit and you got to practice. Generally speaking, things will cook faster because the air is spinning, which will enable faster cooking. So roasted potatoes that normally take in a 375 oven, normally take a good 40 to 45 minutes. I cook maybe 30 minutes on 350, 375, usually 375 convection, which remember is more like a 400-degree oven. So yes, they definitely cook faster. Cookies, 325 convection, about 7 minutes. Challah, 325 convection, about 24 minutes. But you got to test your oven. But that's usually about the rule. Okay, I'm swapping out for the chicken stuff. You'll notice, by the way, I did not in the eggplant, I didn't add salt as the person asked the question. With both soy sauce and miso, you do not need extra salt. I could have added some more fresh ground pepper. I like crushed red pepper, to be honest with you. With both salt and pepper, don't be afraid to use those flavor enhancers. Again, they should enhance the flavor of your food. They should not make something taste peppery or salty. They should bring out the flavor in your food. Okay, so for this, so far, these are really easy recipes. They're pretty much dump and go. So I hope they feel like things that you can tackle at home. I just have chicken in pieces that I cut up and put in a baking dish. 1 second. Going back to the miso, in your recipe booklets, there is a miso chicken. I want to find it here. I want to find it because I want to tell you that it's a new recipe that I made up recently, and it's fantastic. It is a great recipe. Thank you, Sarah. It's a great recipe, this one. I mean, they're all great recipes, but this is a great chicken. I love it. I've been making it a lot on Friday nights. You can make it on Thursday and rewarm it. It has like a marinade and it cooks in the marinade. And then somewhere during the cooking time, you add the glaze and you just finish baking it. So it's again, it's one of these, just mix it up, pour it on the chicken, add this other part, roast it in the oven, and it's super flavorful, really juicy with complex flavor. So I just wanted to highlight that it's good. So I have chicken just cut up in pieces. I cut off some of the extra stuff, meaning the extra fat, the extra skin, the extra bone. Our chickens were really lucky. They're pretty clean today. I will tell you that I like to cook this. I like to make this one or of two ways, either boneless and skinless, where I use this as a marinade and then grill the chicken, or as I'm showing you today, as a roasted chicken, where I leave the skin on. When you leave the skin on, it just enhances the flavor of the juices and the meat underneath. You do not have to eat the skin. I actually don't like to eat the skin, but I like that it adds so much intense flavor. I added some whole pieces of garlic. You might want to take notes. It's not in the recipe. You do not have to do that, but I always like extra whole pieces of garlic. Okay, so this is the next flavor enhancer that we're using is chai tea. You could really use any dried tea of your choice. Chamomile would work great. In fact, they use chamomile in chicken brines. When they brine a chicken, when you see all those recipes around Thanksgiving time for brining turkey, a lot of times they mix with the salt and the sugar, and the salt and the sugar and the water. They mix in there some chamomile tea, which adds moisture and tenderizes. So it's great. Tea is a great tenderizer for meat as well. Chai tea happens to be loaded with just such complex and intense flavorings. Everything again from cinnamon and cardamom and anise seeds. And if you could just smell it, it's delicious. I actually like to cook with it more than I like to drink it. It's too bold for my palate for hot tea, but it's a great, fun ingredient addition. So I literally just buy tea. This is just chai tea. And you cut off the tops of the tea bags. Like this. And you dump them in your little dish. You gotta cut off the top well though.
Oh, you dropped the thing.
I dropped a paper, no problem.
Someone wants to know if there's good hoisin sauce recommendation. Some are so thin and others are very
Yeah.
thick.
You know, kosher ingredients have come so far. I don't love the hoisin sauce. I don't love the hoisin sauce, especially the gluten-free one, which I usually buy. It's a very mediocre It's a mediocre ingredient. There are two brands. One of them is not coming to me. It's the one that's not Mikey. Although Mikey makes great sauces, I don't love his hoisin sauce. So it's the other one. I'm not sure what you have readily available there. Okay, but this is what the tea looks like. It just looks like black tea, dry tea. Yeah, the Joyce Chen. That one I think is a little bit better. Okay, this is what the roasted garlic looks like when it comes out of the oven. You open your little packet, and the leftover oil, if you have any leftover oil, is absolutely delicious. And I usually pour that in. And you just peel off the skin of the garlic and use all these beautiful, beautiful cloves. So these cloves are what you're going to use in your salad dressings in this chicken. It ends up tasting like a not harsh and sharp like garlic, but soft and sweet. For those of you who have never tried it, you will not stop making it. It's so delicious. But this is what a head of roasted garlic looks like, just like that. And you literally just squeeze the whole head and the pulp comes right out. Can you see me doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. And so that is a head of roasted garlic. Okay, one of my other favorite things to use roasted garlic in is mashed potatoes. My kids adore my mashed potatoes because I put in a whole head of roasted garlic and they're just scrumptious. I do not have this on the recipe because I gave you an older version of making this recipe. I like to add a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I thought it was appropriate for this class as well. It's perfectly delicious without it. Do not worry if you forget, but it's my other go-to flavor enhancer, again, in the same realm as garam masala and miso and roasted garlic and tea. It packs a punch of flavor. It's an ingredient most of you have. You see I buy the big ones, and I go through them a lot. Okay.
Someone wants to know if you use loose chai. How much do you use?
It says here right in the recipe, it's 3 tablespoons of loose chai. Okay, I'm adding about 1/4 cup of oil. I have some fresh lemons already quartered. If you don't like lemons, you can use oranges, or you can totally and completely omit that. Okay, I'm gonna sprinkle the chicken with a little bit of salt and pepper. I like to layer salt and pepper as I go. At the end, I'll add some more salt and pepper. Okay, a little bit of pepper and a little bit of kosher salt. Remember, kosher salt dissolves faster, is less intensified than an iodized salt, so you can use it about double how you would use iodized salt. I don't even own iodized salt. I think we have a little bit of it just for challah on Friday nights. Sarah, did I forget anything in this marinade? Olive oil, tea, roasted garlic. The honey comes later.
Kosher salt.
Great. Okay, good. So this is done. It's not a very pretty marinade, but this is basically all we do is I'm going to massage this into the chicken on top of the skin and under the skin. And then we're going to bake the chicken. Again, I would bake it. It says to bake it at 375. I would bake it 350 convection. Lower the time just slightly. Watch your oven. Halfway through cooking, you're going to pull the chicken out and sprinkle it with some white wine and drizzle it with honey. Why don't we do that right now? That's the next question that's coming. I'm going to tell you. One, anything sugar-based will burn in the oven. You don't want a situation where the top of your chicken is burning while the inside is raw. So we always add anything sweet much closer to the ending. You can omit the honey. I like the balance of the sharp ingredients with a tinge of sweetness. Again, I'm talking about a tablespoon over the top. And the reason I don't add the wine right now is I like it to cook in some of its own juices at the beginning, to get some of that roasting and caramelization going. And then later we can add a little bit of liquid.
Someone said, what about Celtic salt?
So I don't have tremendous experience with Celtic salt, to be honest with you. So I can't give you the exact equivalence. I know they sell it a lot in Israel, maybe in Canada also. I do use a lot of sea salt and finishing salts. Both sea salt and finishing salts like Himalayan salt and all of those have wonderful, wonderful, interesting flavor profiles, but they're really used as a finishing salt, meaning when something comes out of the oven, you use it as a finishing salt as opposed to a cooking salt. And in baking, by the way, like when you bake challah, if you normally use 2 tablespoons of regular salt, you can certainly use 4 tablespoons of kosher salt. And I do that all the time. So you see, I'm just marinating this or just massaging this into the chicken, and I'm going to put it in the oven.
Someone wants to know if you can use this marinade on meat.
Yes, this marinade can be used on meat. The same exact idea, except with meat, particularly if you're using like a square roast, a French roast, a Delmonico roast, a brisket, you might want to add the wine as well as the honey before baking it. I would bake it covered, or if you're doing like a standing rib roast, it's beautiful to do it with a standing rib roast, and you can dry heat cook, meaning without it covered.
When someone wants to know about salmon.
Okay, so here, I think that if you were going to try, I've never tried it on salmon. Salmon, halibut, some of the hardier fishes, I would definitely try it. I would not try this with like a sole or a flounder, a lighter, flakier. It needs something hardy like chicken or meat, but I would definitely try salmon or halibut. Let me know how it comes out.
Someone asked, what's Maldon salt?
Okay, Maldon is a brand. Maldon sea sauce. Maldon is a place, and it's also a brand. It's a sea salt. So here's how salt goes. It goes iodized salt, sea salt, kosher salt, from finely ground, medium density to coarse. Kosher salt is the coarser, and then finishing salts like Himalayan sea salt and all those are even coarser usually. Okay, I'm going to put this in the oven, and I'm going to bring out some of the other dishes.
Someone's raising their hand to ask a question. You can ask Gordon to unmute herself.
Okay, you can unmute yourself, those who are raising their hands. 1 second, I'm going to put this in the oven.
Okay. We'll be right back. One moment.
Okay. Thank you for being patient with my my dining room kitchen going back and forth here. Okay. We just put the chicken in the oven. Before I puree the soup, I wanted to show you one other version. So this is really what your chicken is going to look like. This is one I made earlier today. It's room temperature now. And for anybody else who's in the food business like me, food looks much better when it's warmer. But I'm just gonna toss this a little bit in some of the natural pan juices here. This is, I put the wine and the honey on and finished cooking it up. So you could see what it looks like. Oh my God, the soup smells so good. but this is in general what it looks like. What I would do when I plattered this is I would for sure make an extra head of roasted garlic, and I would platter it with the roasted garlic. I would squeeze these beautiful roasted lemons on there, but you see it's nice and caramelized. There's a lot of beautiful herbiness. I would clean up the plate a little bit. But for those of you who subscribe to a lot of magazines, by the way, I write regularly for Ami Magazine also. But for those of you who subscribe to food magazines and who used to subscribe to food magazines, food should look homemade today. Like this beautiful brown caramelization, that's what you want. Food, you want food to look like stuff you want to eat. You don't want it to look perfect like it came out of a bakery anymore. That's like very old school food. One of the reasons they photograph food now very dark on boards with lots of messy salt and chopped herbs all over it is it's part of the culture of eat, decorate your food, make it taste good. It's all about tasting good. It's not all about looking perfect in the bakery. So really you want your food to look like, you want to just dive in. You can see how even room temp, this chicken is beautifully moist and cooked through really perfectly, but the skin is nice and crispy so that those people who do eat the skin is really tasty.
Someone wants to know if the chicken reheats well.
Yeah, the chicken. So let's talk about reheating chicken for a quick second. This chicken does reheat well as long as you don't overcook it. You're going to always reheat a roasted chicken covered on a very, very low heat, like 190, 200 warm for about half an hour. Roasted chicken does not freeze well, conversely. There's a lot of chickens that do freeze well if you freeze them properly. This could be made on a Thursday for a Friday night, on a Monday for a Wednesday night. I don't think I would make it more than 2 days ahead of time, but it rewarms beautifully, no problem. Maybe the last few minutes of rewarming, I would open it up just to re-crisp the outside, but a roasted chicken will not freeze well. It will just get too much condensation and lose that crispy brownness to it. Okay, for those of you who don't own an immersion blender, I highly recommend it. They're amazing. Sarah, can you go get me the blue one? The blue one works better, and it's Parav. I have a few of them. This is my older one. I'm going to bring you one of my newer ones. It's also blue, but it's Parav. I like blue, so I buy a lot of kitchen equipment in blue. But I'm going to just puree. I'm going to just blend the soup for you. It's still hot. I'm going to add a little bit of kosher salt and pepper. Again, remember it's kosher salt. I'm not adding too much. And a little bit of pepper. And I'm personally going to add the cilantro because I like cilantro. I have cilantro lovers and haters in my house. But feel free to use parsley if you prefer, or omit it. Okay, maybe Sarah can't find it. If she can't find it, we're going to go with the white one. It's okay, Sarah. I'll use the white one. Okay, it's going to be loud for a second here. I'm just going to scooch this over. Okay, that really came out really smoothly and quickly. And that is it for the soup. I'm going to just bring it a little closer to the camera. You can see it's kind of like a peachy color. Maybe I'll ladle it into a bowl so you can see it. Let me make sure it's smooth enough here. Sarah, you want to grab a ladle and a bowl? Okay, so Sarah's getting me a ladle and a bowl so you can see a little more clearly what the soup looks like. And I'm just waiting about 5 more minutes for the eggplant to finish roasting up in the oven. And the chicken's pretty much done. So I would say in 1 hour, we did a soup, a side, and a chicken, which is not so bad. So you see the soup. I don't know if you can see me ladling well. The soup has a heartiness without being creamy. Remember, we did add the coconut milk, but there's no heavy cream to it. I would garnish it. You could garnish it a couple ways. You could either garnish it, thank you. You could either garnish it with just some chopped herbs in the top. One other thing you're welcome to email me about is you could do some roasted chickpeas and garnish it with that. I happen to have those, so I'm going to grab those. Okay, sorry about that, but when you think you have something, you actually can find it. It's like such a good feeling. So these are roasted chickpeas. I use them on salads. I just put them on a sheet pan and I mix them with either garam masala or cumin, chili powder, smoked paprika, garlic powder, and a little extra virgin olive oil, 425 or 400 convection for about 12 minutes. And they're super tasty on a salad. And although they are sinking to the bottom, they would be super yummy in this soup. There we go. So there's the soup. The eggplant is almost done, and I'm happy to show you that finished product. I'll answer a few more questions and then show you that finished product.
Someone wants to know what magazines you write for.
Sure. Thank you for being interested in the magazines I write for. I write regularly for Ami Magazine. I'm usually one of their featured columnists once a month where I do a spread of 4 to 6 recipes. I have a few things coming up for them in their Pesach edition. I just did a squash, 2 different squash articles for them. I really write for them very, very regularly. So I've written almost on every topic for them. I write for the Jerusalem Post. They take a syndicated piece of mine. I write for aish.com. And I run the website gourmetkoshercooking.com, which is currently, to be honest with you, under construction for Passover because I run gourmetpassovercooking.com, which has over about 500 recipes specific for Passover. And of course, with Emunah, I was able to publish this beautiful book that I'm very, very proud of. 200 recipes, easy enough for every day, special enough for Shabbos. If you liked some of this, it's more common ingredients, to be honest with you. Our theme tonight was really flavor boosters, some things that were, out of the box and new. I figure you're all kind of sick of just sourdough and the same old ingredients. That was one of the reasons that we chose this topic tonight. But these are really recipes that you can make every day or for Shabbos. And I am working on a second book. And hopefully that should be out in the next, 6 months or so.
Someone wants to know, how do you prevent your immersion blender from scratching your liquor set?
So how do you prevent your immersion blender from scratching your Le Creuset? You do not ever, with an immersion blender, go to the bottom of the pan. It's a good way to scratch your pan and break the blade of the immersion blender. So you want to go in with an immersion blender about 2/3 of the way down. It's pretty easy to feel that in depth and density. So you want to keep it about 2/3 down. I do not go to the bottom of the pan. Eggplant ready? Eggplant is almost ready. I would give the eggplant another 5 minutes, to be honest with you. But in the interest of time, we're going to bring it out. I'll put it right here. Okay. How hot is this? Thank you. Okay. So what I'd like you to see, and I will bring it up here, is that some pieces are lightly browned. But they're yet they are still holding their shape. This is really exactly what you want for the eggplant. You don't want it to become an eggplant dip. You want it to still hold its shape like this, but have some nice roasty toasty pieces like that. I'm going to add the scallions so it doesn't just look like a very round dish.
Yeah.
And then when I put it in the serving dish, I would also add
I'm gonna
some
send you money
black,
for the
white sesame seeds.
ribs. No, we were talking and he said that I don't think I sent you. How much were they anyway? I said 44, because now he wants me to look for a bite for him.
Hi, somebody is unmuted. They could just mute themselves.
So then I would just put this in a nice serving dish and you have a fantastic side dish. I'm happy to stay on and answer questions. I love connecting with people who attend my classes. Feel free to reach out via email or my cell phone. I get tons of questions when people are in the market. What can I substitute for this and for that? I won't make your Shabbos menu, but I'm happy to give you my insights into ingredients or cooking and what's new, trendy foods. And I really love the opportunity to teach on Zoom and in person, and I hope everybody stays healthy and well. Again, I'm going to stay on and answer more questions. I just don't want to hold anybody hostage for tonight. Those of you who haven't received the recipes, you will get them. I encourage you to try them. And what makes my day, to be honest with you, is when you provide that feedback of what works, what doesn't work, what you liked, gently what you didn't like, so that I can keep improving and keep bringing you recipes and techniques that make this incredible part of cooking with love, because it's really one of the ways that we express our love for our families, one of the ways that we take care of people we love, whether it's family or friends or coworkers, is by cooking for them. And we put so much into it. So it's very, very rewarding for me when I know that I've impacted that part of your life and made it a little tastier, a little easier, a little more creative, whatever it is. So please, I welcome your feedback.
And just before everybody goes, I just want to thank you, Elizabeth and the Kurtz family, for really spicing up our evening tonight. I love a cheesy tagline. And we appreciate everyone here this evening who supported Emunah and the amazing work that we do. Next week is our last class. So if you'd like to register, or if you know anyone who would like to register, please pass it on. You can go to emunahcanada.org/cooking, or go to emunah.org/cooking to register if you're in the United States. So thank you, everyone. And if you'd like to stay on, have a good evening, and we hope to see you next week.